Taylor Swift Eras Tour shows in Vienna, Austria have been canceled after authorities say they thwarted an ISIS-inspired terror plot. Law enforcement officials say that they arrested two suspects, including a 19-year-old Austrian citizen who they say pledged allegiance to the leader of the Islamic State and planned to target Vienna with a focus on Swift's concerts. Now, the pop star had 3 shows in Vienna scheduled for tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. ABC News foreign correspondent Maggie Rulli is live for us in London and has been tracking this. Maggie, so glad to have you with us. What more are we learning about the cancellation of these shows and this alleged terror plot here?
Hey, Kenny. Taylor Swift announced the cancellation of her shows on social media. Her team posted a statement saying, with confirmation from government officials of a planned terrorist attack, we have no choice but to cancel the 3 scheduled shows for everyone's safety. Now, this decision came down just hours after officials say they arrested 2 suspects who they say had become radicalized online and also had come up with a very detailed attack on Taylor's concerts in Vienna. Now, police have been quite limited with the information that they're releasing. All we know right now is that one of those suspects is a 19-year-old Austrian citizen. They say had become radicalized online and in recent weeks had pledged their allegiance to the Islamic State. Now, right now, police are searching the house of one of the suspects who lived about an hour south of Vienna. We've seen chemicals being taken out of the house. They're going to be tested for explosives. And, Kata, one thing that the police are stressing right now is that both of these suspects were radicalized online. Kana?
And so, Maggie, what does this now mean for Taylor Swift fans going forward? Any thought that more concerts might get canceled here?
Yeah, right now it's still too early to tell, Canada. But I think one of the big questions that comes out of this is how do police and officials keep soft targets like this concert safe? This concert in particular in Vienna was supposed to have 65,000 people inside the stadium, another 15,000 people outside the stadium. We know her Eras Tour has been breaking records across Europe. There's so many people in a confined space. And so a lingering question here is what steps are going to be taken to make sure concerts like this one and hers going forward can remain safe? Because, I imagine there are so many disappointed fans right now. We've talked a lot about how many Americans have been flying over to Europe to go see Taylor Swift in concert. I'm sure this decision was not made lightly by her team, but I think that also speaks to the level of threat that they were dealing with and the real fear surrounding some of these concerts, Kana.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wake Up Call channel. If you're wondering how psychological operations work, also known as Psyops, look no further than everything that engulfs Taylor Swift, everything that surrounds Taylor Swift, because they continually use Taylor Swift, who is a government creation, as all these celebrities are government assets. They use Taylor Swift to lure in the audience into believing these government staged events are actually occurring. And a few days ago, we had the stabbing that left 3 children dead, which happened at a Taylor Swift-themed event, which led to those riots that the government created over in the UK, which I just covered. And now there's an alleged Taylor Swift terror plot that is supposedly or was supposedly going to happen at Taylor Swift's concert in Austria. But thankfully, that was thwarted after 2 men were arrested in Vienna. Now, you might say to yourself, well, wait a minute. Why would the CIA, who really is ISIS, why would they attack Taylor Swift? Well, of course, there's no plan to attack Taylor Swift, at least not yet, unless they could create something massive out of it, a massive psychosis out of it. But the CIA is responsible for creating ISIS. ISIS is the Israel Secret Intelligence Service, which is the Zionists. And as most of you know, this whole conflict going on over in the Middle East between Hamas and Israel, Hamas was created by Israel. Hamas is ISIS. So to summarize this, the CIA is responsible for all these terror groups, and the CIA themselves would not call in a terror threat to a Taylor Swift concert. So the reason, of course, for this is one of many. The PSYOP itself keeps people stuck in their phones. It keeps people divided. It keeps people misinformed, and it gets people to hate a certain group of people who they think would be responsible for such an act, right? And right now, you see how they are positioning people against Muslims. Now, for those of you that don't believe that ISIS themselves is actually a government-created, CIA-created entity, well, then one is very uninformed about how all of this works. But let's even go to Barry Soetoro, who will tell us himself. Barry Soetoro, by the way, is Barack Obama. That's his real name. Barry Soetoro even had a slip of the tongue where he said that they were training ISIL forces, and ISIL is actually ISIS. It was called ISIL before it was called ISIS. It's the same exact group. And he even admitted how our government was training ISIL forces.
So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces.
So it's pretty unbelievable to think that our own CIA, who Taylor Swift is affiliated with, would actually be going after Taylor Swift. You remember all those stories that were out there about Taylor Swift back around the Super Bowl where they're actually gaslighting people, and alarmingly high number of Republicans think Taylor Swift is a psyop. If people only realize that all of these celebrities work for the CIA, they are intel agents, they are influencers by design to influence your behavior and influence you on your ideologies and perspectives of the world, which is why all, if not every single celebrity, at least every popular one, is a Democrat, because they're all communists. They're communist foot soldiers. That's how this entire operation works. So Taylor Swift was, again, the biggest artist in the world, they claim, in 2023. We all know Taylor Swift is the most popular. So the question is, why are they doing this? Why use Taylor Swift? Well, of course, there's always a reason that they use people like Taylor Swift. And you have to read the articles to read between the lines. But they say police alluded to the role of social media in both the radicalization of the suspects and alleged planning of the attacks. They said, quote, communication of the perpetrators is undertaken usually in an encrypted form, often masking their conversations from routine counter-terror surveillance, according to General Director for Public Safety Franz Roof told reporters. And then this is the big story here. Online chatter to action. I just covered this in the UK riot story. It's the same exact theme, right? Online chatter to action. They are hell-bent on linking up, not just removing free speech. Let's get past that. Okay, we need to get past the mindset of removal of free speech, because we already know that they suppress free speech. Anytime the algorithm catches on to people like me and you, they will remove us. It's about more than that. They want to criminalize people like us who are questioning government, who are talking about false flags, which means calling out a lot of these shootings that occur and calling them staged events. They want to criminalize it, which is part of what Alex Jones' role was in all of this, to set precedent for civil cases and eventually for criminal cases, right? So online chatter to action. Listen to this. The path of online teenage chatter turning to real-world plotting has become alarmingly common in recent months. A study by terrorism expert Peter Newman showed teenagers accounted for nearly 2/3 of ISIS-linked arrests in Europe in the previous 9 months. The study of 27 ISIS-linked attacks or disrupted plots since October last year revealed that of the 58 suspects, 38 were aged between 13 and 19, according to Newman, professor of security studies at King's College London. Newman noted the latest data showed the number of attacks and planned attacks has more than quadrupled since 2022. Among the cases Newman referenced was another in Austria in which a 14-year-old girl from Montenegro was arrested in May in the southern city of Graz after buying a knife and axe for an attack she allegedly plotted. ISIS material was also found on her computer. Teenagers were also arrested during France's security sweep ahead of the Paris Olympics. So what they're going to use ISIS for here is to begin shifting, right? You can use ISIS. They're going to use ISIS to start putting more laws and rules in place because they're going to convince people that these groups online of ISIS are recruiting young teenagers. These kids are getting their minds warped. They're making them think that this or that. So we have to watch what is said online. So anybody who's promoting a group like ISIS or speaking for a group like ISIS should be held responsible, right? Then it starts to shift as to who the new enemy of the state is. Because for now they can use ISIS. And of course, this plays in very heavily with World War III and choosing between the Islamic State and Israel, which again, like I mentioned in Albert Pike's World War III manifesto, playing out to a T, right? people are going to choose sides. People are going to become divided over the issue. You have people in America who don't even have a clue about what's going on that are siding with either Palestine or Israel. We have Christians siding with Israel who don't even understand what biblical Israel is. So we have a lot going on with that. And that's part of how this is all going to play out. But sooner than later, the new ISIS group is going to be what they've already started formulating in people's minds are these right-wing, right, Christian nationalists that are going to be looked at as ISIS-like groups. So then the speech goes from, well, online chatter about conspiracy theories and how the government is doing this or the government's doing that is leading people to go out and commit these acts of violence or these criminal acts out in public. And the people online who are chattering about it need to be held accountable. That's all there is to the story about Taylor Swift. That's all there is to this. You heard in the news clip I played earlier, how many times did they mention online chat? Oh, they were talking online. They're talking online. It's about more than a digital ID, and it's about more than free speech online. It goes deeper. It's about criminalizing speech. It's about taking people like me and you and suddenly saying that we're dangerous and we're threats. The stuff we're talking about, saying that the government could be doing something or the government's creating staged events, oh, that is dangerous to even say. Meanwhile, there's no trials that occur with any of these shootings. There's no evidence ever presented. And I use the example of the true crime stuff all the time to make people put it in perspective because they go, oh, yeah, good point. Right? The media tells us that this event happens. There's no trial. There's no bodies. There's nothing. They just say, here's the shooter. This is what happened. Let's move on. Right? But when there's a true crime case, you could see somebody who's blatantly guilty. It's very clear that the person's guilty, but still they say, well, there's circumstantial evidence and then we need real evidence. And then we go through all the stuff in the true crimes, right? They get the DNA, they find the timeline of where this person was, and everybody wants to get the case resolved. They want to let's get to the bottom of it. We need more evidence. We need more evidence, right? But when it comes to the news stories, we don't need any evidence. We just need them to tell us and then to say, hey, we need your guns. Or for them to tell us and say, hey, Christians are extremists. Or for them to tell us, them to tell us, right? Never evidence presented, ever. And there's never a trial for the most part. There's like 2 trials out of 100, right? Parkland's like one of the only trials that they actually gave us, which was another, dog and pony circus act. So in the future, again, remember, for people who think, about going off grid, because one of the common things that I get asked about is, what can we do? Can we go off grid? Why don't we all get together off grid? And the obvious answer is that if all of us were on here and we were talking about, hey, why don't we all move to, let's say, a state like Oklahoma, right? Let's get land. I don't know. I just picked that off the top of my head. Let's pick a place like that, right? Or let's pick somewhere safer because we know they could hit weaponized weather tornadoes there, even though they could hit anywhere. Let's pick Wyoming, right? You pick Wyoming, you say, hey, we're going to farm there. We're going to do all this stuff there. The government will immediately start putting stories out that a group of online conspiracy theorists that they deemed extremists all moved together to a place like Wyoming. Now, our mindset and our goal could be, hey, we're shutting off the government. We're not getting involved in this. We're not doing taxes. We're not participating in this charade that's going on. We're going to barter. We're going to live off the land. Well, the government isn't going to allow that. So the government would do a Waco. They would create story after story after story about us, telling everyone out there, well, these people are there. What they're doing is they're plotting against liberal cities. They're plotting against these people. They're plotting against gays because they're Christian extremists. And then everybody out there would say, hey, we got to arrest these people. We should kill these people. Go Waco these people. They're a dangerous threat. That's all it takes for them, is to hear it on the tell-lie vision, and they believe the story. That's how psychological operations work, and that's what this Taylor Swift story is about. They're taking the most popular musician on the planet, right, on Earth. They're taking Taylor Swift, who all these young white teens and young white girls listen to, and they're now pulling them into the psychological operation of worrying about safety, worrying about terror groups, and it's going to shift. They're going to use ISIS to put laws in place to criminalize people and criminalize quote-unquote online chatter. And since everybody out there should know, and if you don't know, now you know, that the CIA runs and controls ISIS, this is not to stop a group that the CIA controls. This is for us. And it's going to shift to people like us, because the more propaganda they put out, right now it's the alt-right, it's alt-right's dangerous, conservatives are dangerous, but it's shifting towards white nationalist Christians is what it's shifted towards, okay? And it's really geared towards me and you. That's what it's geared towards, because the people who are stuck in the left-right are going to do what the government wants them to do, because they're going to invest themselves in the Republican candidates. They're going to believe that their vote counts. And when they pull the rug out from underneath them and tell them that Donald Trump didn't win, they'll follow Donald Trump and they'll do what they're told to do. It is for us. And the more propaganda they put out, after these laws are in place, it'll be geared towards us, criminalizing people like us. And you would think that maybe some people out there would be suspicious and say, hey, why all of a sudden, yeah, right, why would ISIS, okay, so you have ISIS, you have all this stuff going on in the Middle East, ISIS is targeting and trying to recruit people to go after Taylor Swift. Oh, well, because it makes zero sense, right? But you would think that people would realize that. But this is what tells us that the CIA and all the intel agencies, the Mossad, all them working together, what they think of humanity and how dumb they think people really are. And they think that people are really dumb because they are. And they know they could tell them whatever they want, and they will believe whatever they're told, and they can literally just create psyop after psyop after psyop around Taylor Swift with no motive whatsoever. What's ISIS's motive, right? Don't we always need a motive in these crime shows, in these crime stories that we hear? What's the motive? They don't like her music? Well, nobody likes her music, right? So what's the motive for them? Oh, they don't like her because she's white? I mean, why would they pick it? Well, because Taylor Swift's the most popular. Everybody knows Taylor Swift. Right? It's a demographic that they're targeting for propaganda. And of course, this will bring about more and more and more online chatter that could lead to criminalization. So it's unbelievable at this point that we see stories like this actually out there. I mean, we all know we've seen Taylor Swift doing the all-seeing eye. I've exposed her it feels like hundreds of times. I know I've done at least 20 videos from Taylor Swift and Anton LaVey's daughter to Taylor Swift clones, to all the signs and symbols in the Taylor Swift music videos. Of course, we've seen her doing the all-seeing eye and everything else that these CIA operatives do, right? Because their god is Lucifer, which they show us every single day. And now what they're trying to do is take full-on control of every single thought that we have and criminalize us for thinking anything that doesn't go with what they want us to think, which is, again, you might say, well, I don't care. Maybe, they should. I know there's people out there that can't stand. I mean, they're like, oh, they should criminalize conspiracy theorists, which is an insane notion because nobody's even calling for violence. We're calling for people to wake up. But eventually they're going to tell you to go along with some sick, insane stuff. And people out there don't realize how sick they are. They're going to start normalizing human sacrifice and all this other stuff that they do in darkness. They will. And people go, that's crazy. It won't happen. It will happen. Because all it takes is desensitizing you over time. They can put out articles about cannibalism being good for your body, how it can cure Alzheimer's, and people just go along with it. The next thing you know, 10 years after hearing it for the first time, they're on board because that's how desensitizing people work. So we're talking about all human beings losing their rights to a really wicked, corrupt, warped government, global government, who, again, creates all these intel agencies and has all these intel groups which are designed to create psychological operations. These things, they create psychological operations in your mind, and they get you to want to be on board with what the government wants, which, again, is more censorship and more criminalization of anyone who questions Big Brother. And that's a real problem. And people out there who don't agree with that, well, eventually they're going to agree with it, and it's going to be too late when they realize just how radically insane these demons are. So Taylor Swift, no coincidence, there was just a stabbing at a Taylor Swift event over in the UK, which led to government-created riots. And then, of course, days later, we have the canceling of Taylor Swift's concert because ISIS isn't focused on it. ISIS is very much focused right now on Taylor Swift fans. Huh? Yeah, of course it doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to. They know that most people are too dumb to realize how the government operates. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always and your families.